Hello, and welcome to Temple of the False Pod, where our decks are not optimized, but our plays sure as heck are fun. I'm Andy.
I'm Bruce.
Yeah. Welcome back to Season 13. This is our penultimate episode of the season. I'm losing it. How are you?
I am doing well. And the reason Andy's losing it is because I had the idea for this podcast. So let me just sort of give you a general gist of what we're going to do for the next 30 minutes. Whenever we're building a deck, sure, there's a little pen and paper going on, but primarily speaking, we're all online, and we're going to talk about some of the programs, some of the websites that we use when we're putting our decks together. Given the volume of cards and everything else that's out there, there are a lot of great websites that you can really take advantage of when it comes to putting your decks together. Because there was a time when I would just use the cards I had and work out my entire deck by pulling cards out of my collection and stacking them up and then working it down to a suitable 100. But those days are long gone, and and good riddance to them. It was so difficult to come up with a coherent set of 100 cards, and then you'd end up with another 300 cards that you just had to put back into your collection. It was just a pain. So I thought we would look at some of the websites. So we're gonna start off talking about where we're putting our decks in the first place, because realistically, whenever you start, maybe some of you start with the blank page. I prefer to start with a blank sheet from Architect. And I know, Andy, you've been using Moxfield now, right?
Yeah. And honestly, like when I started, I was using just spreadsheets, which was good to an extent. But these other websites definitely have a good UI. They're just super helpful. They're all in one place.
Right. And so for those of you who haven't used either of these websites, just a general idea, you log into your account, and then usually you're creating a deck. So you'll start with a new deck. I almost always start with having already chosen my commander. So I'll put the commander into the deck. And then from there on in, you can start adding cards in whatever way you choose. So they all have different setups. I personally prefer to use they've got one where there's a blank input. So I'll type in the obvious inclusions that I want in the deck. I already have a general idea of what kind of ramp spells I want and that kind of thing. But most importantly, once you get it in there, then you can view it all, and you can also sort it depending on what the cards are there for. So that way, it makes it very easy for me to keep track of. I'm looking for roughly 10 ramp cards and maybe 10 removal spells. So I can stack those into each of their own categories. And both options will let you put it into two categories at once. So that proves very helpful. So if you've got, most of the time, if I'm tracking if I've got a ramp spell that also lets me draw a card, I don't know, Solemn Simulacrum is the easiest one to come up with. Right. You can put it in both categories, which is a lot harder to do when you're doing it on pen and paper, or even when you're doing it on a spreadsheet, because then it just sort of shows up twice, and then you start losing track of how many cards do I actually have in my deck. So this sort of thing really helps with that. I really like getting it set up that way, because then once you've done all of the obvious stuff, or the stuff you intend to use, sometimes you're at 150 cards. Well, Now I can go through each of my sections and say, you know what, this is only a ramp card, and I already have 12 of those. So do I need this one? No, I'm going to take it out. Or you can look at all of the ones that are there and choose the one you think is the least effective, or maybe it's the one that doesn't fit the theme quite right, but you put it in there because you weren't sure if you were going to have enough. But it allows you to see all that visually.
What I like too about these websites is that it'll allow you to visualize them like on the fly, like differently. You
Yeah.
know, like you can put them into the categories like you're saying, like ramp or removal, or does this thing with the commander, and beyond that too. Like you can then just go like click of a button, have it go back to creatures, artifacts, enchantments,
Yes.
that type of thing. And I think one of the biggest things I love about these is that toward the bottom of the page, it'll show you your curve, which is nice generally. I mean, like,
Yeah.
I use it kind of just sometimes. I don't super stick to curve, but
I'm much the same way. What I find is that when I'm getting down to the last few cards, if I'm 5 or 10 cards short, or maybe I've got a few too many, a lot of times I will look at the curve that's laid out at the bottom of the window, and just looks like my curve's a little high, or maybe I need, my curve isn't particularly even, and I need either, maybe I need more 5-drops, or I could use a few less 5-drops to sort of smooth that curve out.
Yeah.
Maybe that will lead me towards trying to find more 5-drops, or removing a 5, whatever the case may be.
Yeah. I think in addition to that, like just the whole stats part of each of these websites is like so crucial, because it really does help you kind of figure out where your land base is going to be. Say you have a 2-color land base or a 2-color deck.
Yes.
It tells you, at least in the casting cost of each spell,
Yes.
How many pips there, like total, how many pips you have in the deck, rather than having to go through and count them all, figure out like fractions and stuff, and like, it will give you generally a good idea of how many lands you want of each color. Because like obviously if you want an earlier game green, and then like later, like you don't care about the blacks until like later in the game, like you can use your judgment there, but it'll also update with how much, like what color of manas you're producing from these lands. And you can kind of match it up with the pie graph that it shows. It's so good.
It is. It's like, I mean, I almost always put 40 lands in the deck, unless there's a very strong reason for me not to. But invariably when I do that, like when I start putting cards in, I'll put 5 or 10 of each of the basics for all the colors that I'm using. And then when I'm finished and I've got my 40 lands in there, then you scroll down to the bottom of the page. It's like, oh, the stats here say that I probably should take out 2 more islands and put in 2 more plains.
Right.
So I go back up, I'll do that, and then scroll back down just to see how far the needle has moved. So I feel like I'm definitely tuning my mana base a lot better than I used to.
And
it used to be literally counting all the pips.
Yeah.
So.
And then figuring out the fraction. It's just so like time consuming, and so I don't know, like it's fine to do it that way. And I think like with these websites, it's not even necessarily like a cheat, because like it's not going to be perfect. It'll be good enough, especially when you start. When you build a deck.
Well, and exactly what and to your point, if you've got, if most of your first 3, the options on your first 3 turns are all white spells, but your black spells have more pips in them, but you don't need it until later, that's not something necessarily that the stats are taking into account. They're looking at the sum total.
Right.
So you're going to want to keep an eye on that, but it sure is a helpful starting point. At least you can lay it out there and like, okay, well, this is what it says. Now let's look at this and decide if it needs to be adjusted at all. It's a great way to run it.
Yeah. So. Now the other thing that these websites include is a search function, which is very helpful, because I mean, like, especially compared to say using just spreadsheets, you can just add cards from the general database, the search, right? You can search by name. I know both of these websites, both Architect and Moxfield, have very robust search engines, which are to some extent based on Scryfall, which we'll talk about soon.
Right.
But it'll allow you to search by, Oracle text. It'll allow you to search by type and color and, the things that you want to be able to search for.
Right.
My favorite thing about Moxfield, and I don't know if Architect has this implemented yet or plans to, but Moxfield has also a collection section where you can just import your collection, and then it will tell you what cards you have. So like you look at the deck list, and it has like little checks of like, oh, you have this, or you have this but a different printing, or like something like that. It is super helpful and super invaluable to just be able to have your collection and your deck lists in the same area, because then you know what you need to buy.
Well, that, and it really reduces it. When you're putting your deck together and you're now trying to whittle cards out of your deck, well, I can whittle the one I have or the one I have to buy.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to take the one I have to buy out, because and you're going to know that immediately before you even start pulling cards out. So, see, I'm still using Architect, and as far as I know, they don't have that option. So that option alone might be enough to get me to switch over to Moxfield, because I do have all of my cards listed, but it's I haven't tried that option in Moxfield, so I'll have to give it a ring. I check out. You had mentioned search.
Yeah.
While the search function is robust, I am old, and I have been using Scryfall and Gatherer for the longest of times, and I continue to use them. So,
absolutely.
I wanted to talk a little bit about these sites, as they're essentially the dedicated search engines. So, Gatherer is the official Wizards one, and it's great. The advanced search options on that site are quite good. I much prefer Scryfall. I find that the ability to search on Scryfall allows Boolean searches, and I don't think Gatherer does. That's kind of the death blow. I mean, if you are happy to just simply click on options, then Gatherer is just fine, and it looks really nice and it runs really smoothly. Scryfall runs great, and I've never had any issues. I think it does everything that Gatherer does and a little bit better.
Yeah, I think the thing with Scryfall for me is that it like, while Gatherer does run smoothly, I think Scryfall just runs smoother. Both have high-res art, or at least like card scans. They both have rulings and like tips, I guess.
Yeah.
Rulings for like specific card interactions that are like official rulings.
Right.
They both have, the entire history of the card game. Yeah. And
the thing I find that Scryfall has that Gatherer doesn't, pricing. They are, I think it's TCG Player and Card Kingdom prices, I think, are both on Scryfall. Don't have it open right now, but
I think they also have Card Market too, but that's, we're not in Europe, so.
It's, but the options are there. So again, if you're doing a search and you know that this is something you're going to be needing to buy, it can point you to, you're going to see which options are better priced, or it can point you to, particular sites one way or the other. So that's something I really like about Scryfall.
Yeah.
And so I tend to go back and forth. So I'll have Architect open in one window and Scryfall sitting right next to it. So I'm doing a search on Scryfall. I'm like, oh, these 6 cards are great. But then they go into Architect, and maybe I'll sort it later. But I'm just going back and forth between the two sites. So.
Yeah, there's definitely like, I don't know. I wouldn't even necessarily say that the search function in Architect or Moxfield is like lacking, but there is a certain smoothness to having them both open and then just like typing it into into your deck builder of choice.
Yeah.
Because like it is just like, it's fast. You get like all your information in one spot with Scryfall. It's just like, it's pristine. And what I love too is that like there are smaller features within Scryfall that really help the deck building process. Whether like you can create deck lists on Scryfall.
Yeah.
It's less of like a shareable thing.
Yeah.
It's there, but like it's more, to have the list. From what I can tell, I haven't really fully like dove into it, but it's good. There's also like the tagging system in Scryfall is top notch.
Yeah.
If you go into the Scryfall tagger, which you scroll to the bottom, it says use Scryfall tagger or whatever, and click that, it brings up any card that is similar to it, like does a similar effect or does the same effect. So like maybe it's like a functional reprint of something. Now you can have two of the same card in a commander deck because bam, they're the same thing.
Right.
It's super helpful to find other cards that are like the ones that you want to be doing. So Scryfall obviously has the, if you know what you're looking for, has that feature. Or if you're like, I want something like this,
yeah,
you can do it, which is great.
It's a beautiful thing. Something else Scryfall has. In the toolbox section, there's a button that says Card Analysis on EDHREC. And let's talk about EDHREC. For the one of you out there who's listening to this podcast who's never used EDHREC,
welcome to Magic.
Welcome to Magic. So EDHREC is a website that is specifically for commander decks. In the search engine, you type in a Magic card, any card. It does not matter. Type in the card, and it will tell you, and then it gives you all kinds of options. Generally speaking, most people, when they're typing something in that search engine, it's usually the commander, because they want to see cards that go with the commander, and that's what EDHREC does. So they break things down. So, for example, if you punch in Brina, it'll show you the card. It shows you pricing in different places. Then it also gives it a ranking. So what EDHREC does is they scrape a bunch of websites for any commander decks, and then they put them up and then they include them in their stats on the website. So it's an aggregator, and it will give you just general numbers from what they've seen from the card that you're looking at. So in this case for Brina, on today's date, because it's going to change, there's 3,890 decks, which means that the cards you're about to see are from those 3,890 decks, and it breaks it down so it gives you a percentage. So this card is in this many percent of the deck. But more importantly, it also breaks the cards down by so these are the cards that are new, that they've just come out in recent sets. The high synergy tab also gives you a bunch of cards that work really well with the commander. And to be fair, those are the ones that I tend to gravitate towards first. I'm less interested in the new cards or the top cards, even the creatures of the instance. I want the high synergy cards. These are the ones that that somehow make Brina better, or Brina makes them significantly better. And to me, that's what I'm really looking for in my decks. But that's where I end up. But it tags out all kinds of cards. It gives you each of the card types and which of them will go in. You can go through this whole section, and if you want, you can build your entire deck based on what EDHREC tells you. Or you can use it and say, I'm going to build my deck with none of the cards that EDHREC has. I wouldn't recommend that either. That's really playing the hard game. But it's there, and I recommend you use it, if for no other reason that a lot of the decks that I build, I'll build the whole deck and then go to EDHREC, because I want to see, is there something that's blatantly obvious that I have just missed? My radar just completely missed it. And every once in a while, I'll find something and just like, oh, what an idiot. I can't believe I missed that card. But so EDHREC is great for stuff like that.
Yeah. And I think too, with EDHREC, what I love is like it obviously aggregates all that data.
Yeah.
It spits it out in a fairly comprehensive and like understandable way.
Yeah.
But it also like it gives you recommendations, hence the rec.
Yes.
And it like I know a lot of people who use EDHREC kind of as just like, okay, like I'm just trying to throw together a deck, like what are the top cards that I need, like you were saying. Yeah. But also, like, if you, much like Scryfall, if you dig in a little deeper, you can find these like more niche cards, and like you know that they're fairly niche because like they're in like smaller amounts of decks and whatever. And like just kind of sifting through the different search terms and such in EDHREC really helps. But I like too that like you've got the main page of your commander. For Brina, Brina the Demagogue, it says, you know, Brina the Demagogue commander. But beyond that, you can search, like you said, like you can search any card, and it'll show you what commanders that's good in, what other cards they're generally found with. With Brina, there's an as commander button, as card, like if you just have her in the 99. The average deck, what kind of decks they're in. But then you've got things like budget. It defaults to any budget, but like if you have a lower budget in mind, you can click that and it'll show more inexpensive cards.
Right. It's not going to show you the Smothering Tides and all these other ones. It's going to show you stuff that's more likely within your budget if that's kind of what you're looking at. All of these buttons here are seriously underused by a whole lot of people. It is so easy to just come to the site, punch in a commander name, and scroll down. It's like, well, hang on, because the theme on my Brina deck is primarily plus and plus one counters. Well, there's a tag just to the left of the art, which literally says there's 185 decks. So if I'm looking for something from my deck, I just click on that, and then it's going to give me all of the cards that are more likely going to be focused on that theme. So it's going to be even more helpful. And then the advanced filters over on the right, it's just another step that the site offers. And I think you're crazy not to take advantage of all of it. It's truly impressive. And like I said, initially when the site came out, I was very much against it. I felt like that it was just encouraging everybody to build the exact same deck. It's like, here are the cards that should go in your deck. Now I treat it very much differently. These are the cards that go in the average deck. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily mean that the cards that you've chosen aren't good. It just means that, you know, this audience maybe they haven't seen it yet. I mean, you're going to go down through this list, and when you see the lands, Scrubland probably isn't there because Scrubland costs a fortune, and it's not in a lot of decks because of that. So it may not make the list. But if you change your budget restrictions around, Scrubland suddenly shows up. But it's just, you can, you know, just because not everybody has found the card doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that you found something a little bit different. Maybe you did find something bad. Maybe you've misread the card. Take a real good look. But it's, you know, it guides you along. It's like having the friend who knows all of the cards, who can say, wow, you know, that would go really good in this deck. Yeah. Except you're finding out before you have to play a game without it.
And I think like it can be overwhelming at first because there's so much going on in this website. But there's also a podcast to go with it. So if you're ever looking for a new Magic podcast, go check out EDHREC. Yeah. I enjoy it. They kind of bring a lot of like focus to what's going on this website, because I mean they made it. But it's always so interesting to like see this as like beyond the step of like, this is how I'm going to build my decks, because it is so great to, I don't know, like have the information of like, am I like, a lot of deck builders want to be unique, and finding out whether your card choices are as unique as you think they are is always just kind of like, oh, okay. But it also interesting. With each commander page, there's a tab that says combos. I don't know if we want to start talking about combos.
Let's start talking about combos. Specifically, there's a website. It's called commanderspellbook.com. If you go to the advanced tab, punch in a card name, and then you can start getting all kinds of options. So whether this is a case of you want to build a deck full of combos, here's where you can go to find combos that will fit in your deck, that will work for your deck. Or I built my deck. I'm afraid that there is a 2-card combo in here that's going to go infinite on me, and I don't want that. You can punch in your cards and find out if you've accidentally created this. Either give it the double check or use it as a stepping stone towards building that the deck with a combo of cards. It's so easy to say dirty combo, but I mean, the site also asks like, how many cards do you want in your combo? Yeah. So if you want to say 15, you can say 15.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to say 6 or whatever, you can do that.
I love that you can just copy and paste the deck list right in.
Yeah.
And it'll tell you what combos you have, what combos you almost have, and not only that, it'll list what type of combo. So like infinite leave the battlefield, infinite ETB, infinite death trigger. Like I have my my Khazar and Ukima deck list still in here, and it says you've got 9 potential combos found with additional color requirements. So like you don't even have to use this for EDH decks. You don't have to use this for commander decks.
Yeah.
Where I could Azor the Lawbringer because I already have Thassa in here. Opponents cannot cast sorcery spells or instant spells during their turn. So it's like this, like it will give you these ideas, or if you want to lean away from the combos, it will tell you what you have in there, which doesn't necessarily mean that you can't play those cards in that deck. Just be aware that combo's in there, which is helpful.
Right. And I mean, to be fair, we're, it's a 30-minute podcast. We're only really scraping the surface here. So if you haven't used one of the sites that we've talked about, I recommend you do. These are some of the more common ones. I didn't really even talk about various apps that you can use. I mean, I have an app that I run. It's a deck builder, and it as a way to sort my collection. Yeah. And I'm not going into that right now, because that's beyond what we were talking about. But there are all sorts of options for apps and other websites that are out there that will help with your deck lists. I recommend you check them out.
Yeah. If you have the chance, go check out the Prof on YouTube, Tolarian Community College. His channel, amazing for any sort of information, I guess. Like, especially if you're a new player, if you haven't heard of him, go check him out. It's a fun time. He used to do all sorts of like product stuff, and that's not really what I'm talking about. But he had a series where he would talk about certain websites. It's how I learned so much about Scryfall that I wouldn't have known, even with like trying to just like explore it a little. It's a few years old, the video, but definitely still relevant. Go check out that video. I think he's got one about EDHREC. I don't know if these are all the same video. Again, haven't watched it in a couple of years. And obviously these websites have updated over the past couple of years. So like it's not perfect, but it is very good to just understand what is available. That's going to do it for us today. Hope you had a nice time visiting our library of cozy, magic, fun deck build time. But we'll be back next week. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, you know who you are. If you're over there and you're not subscribed, please do. We're Temple of Falsepod. We're at X and Not Optimized, but our plays sure as heck are fun. I'm Andy.
I'm Bruce.
And go play some Magic for me. Have a great night. May your fifth land be the Temple.
Bye!
Wait. Before you go, just wanted to say thank you for listening. You can reach out to us via email at falsepodmtg@gmail.com or on Twitter at falsepodmtg. Bruce is at ManaBurned, and I'm at Andy Weekend, though you'll definitely notice I use the podcast Twitter far more often. Now that we've got you here, make sure you subscribe, like, rate us on whatever podcast platform you use. It helps us out. It gets us more reach. Subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. Like a video there. Leave some comments for more casual enjoyment. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back with some more timeless discussions about all things casual. So come hang out, and may your fifth land be the Temple. Bye-bye. Should I do my best, Bruce? Bye!